Welcome to Supercool, the show about climate solutions that cut emissions, grow profits, and outperform the status quo. Each week, we talk with the innovators reshaping the modern world through breakthrough technologies, strategies, and business models. This is the rise of the low-carbon economy, a multi-trillion-dollar transformation already underway. I'm your host, Josh Dorfman. If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to subscribe or leave a review wherever you listen. And if you want to go deeper into next-gen climate innovations now scaling, check out our weekly newsletter. You can find it at getsuper.cool. In 2005, I moved to Greenpoint in Brooklyn. Next to my apartment at the intersection of Bedford Ave and Manhattan Ave was a Polish restaurant. And every evening, my bedroom in the back would fill with a pungent aroma of goulash. Greenpoint was fantastic in that way. Part of the city's fabric, yet also far removed. And it could literally feel miles away. Around that time, I created The Lazy Environmentalist on SiriusXM. And soon I was commuting daily to our studio in Midtown Manhattan to host the show. So I bought a fold-up bike. For me, it made total sense. I could ride to the subway, fold it up, and carry it on the train, then unfold it once again when I hit Manhattan and race to the recording studio, because I've basically been running late my entire life. I don't remember the exact brand I bought, but it was awful to ride. It looked cool, but the wheels were tiny and it was uncomfortable. Still, for city life, it was fun. Fun to have that freedom. Fun to fold it up and slide it under a desk. Fun to tuck it away and just keep moving. Today, we're talking with a company that invented the entire modern category of folding bikes. That's Brompton. And for 50 years, it's been the gold standard, the industry leader, and the most reliable, time-tested option. Brompton has legions of fans, practically a cult following. When they pass each other on the street, they nod, almost to acknowledge that, yeah, this bike is awesome, and if you know, you know. The bike is more than a bike. It's a tool, a design icon, an engineering marvel, a performance juggernaut. Just in 2025 alone, GQ magazine named it the best folding bike of the year. Bicycling magazine and Cycling Weekly named it the best all-around folding bike. Gear Patrol came out with a glowing review of Brompton's new, upsized 20-inch wheel G-Line model, purposefully designed for the American market. Wallpaper magazine, curator of all things design and luxury, did a feature on the company's London-based factory. And the New York Times listed the Brompton fold-up bike as a design classic of the future. In this time of exploding interest in low-carbon urban mobility, Brompton is the gold standard for fold-up bikes. And if you ask Juliet Scott-Croxford, president of the Americas for Brompton, she'll say it's a vehicle for joy. She and Brompton are on a mission to create urban freedom for happier lives. So how do you do that? How do you expand the market for a design icon in a niche industry that aligns so precisely with the joyful, low-carbon future? That's what Juliet's been focused on since joining Brompton in 2021. Now, everyone knows Brompton in London, across the UK, and in most of Europe. Even though the brand's been in the States for years, Americans are still mostly getting introduced right now. As you'll hear today, that's a massive opportunity, but one fraught with complexity. To state the obvious, America is a really big place with a lot of space. A bike that folds up so small you can fit it in the overhead bin of an airplane? That's super cool. But how do you target the right people who need it? And then, how do you open flagship stores called Brompton Junctions, now in New York City and Washington, D.C., and grow your online e-commerce sales while still delighting and showing how much you value the network of elite bike shops across the country that you've spent years cultivating? The bike business, after all, is a relationship business. None of it is easy, and all of it is important. It's up to Juliet and her team to execute and make it work. Because, as Juliet says, the innocence of learning to ride a bike as a kid and the fun and freedom you feel, that's what you want to continue. And that's the exact feeling she wants more people to experience. On a Brompton, of course. Here's our conversation. Juliet, welcome to Supercool.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be on Supercool, making me feel cool.
Well, we're just getting started, so Wait till the end, see how you feel. It's gonna be incredible. Let's jump in. Start with Brompton. Tell us a little bit about the history of the company, state of the company today, and then how you came to join just a few years ago, as I actually understand, during COVID.
Yep.
That's pretty interesting as well. So let's just start there. Give us the quick overview.
Brompton is a beloved bike brand based in the UK. It really invented the world's most iconic bike 50 years ago. So we're actually celebrating our 50th anniversary this month and this year, which marks 5 decades of innovative folding design and urban mobility. Really, the intention is that we're made for cities, built for cities, and we sell our bikes across 47 countries across the world. We operate in about 17 flagship Brompton Junction retail stores in cities across the world, including London, Paris, New York, Washington, DC, Beijing, Tokyo. And we also sell to a selected 1,500 independent bike stores worldwide. North America is quickly becoming one of Brompton's fastest growing markets globally. So obviously we've been quite established in the UK and Europe for some time. China and other parts of Asia are big markets for us. And actually as a direct market, we're relatively new to operating in North America. So we currently have 2 Brompton flagship junctions in New York and DC, and then we sell to about 120 dealers, independent bike shops, retail doors across the US, as well as some bigger kind of national retailers like REI. And one thing just to share is that our stores really serve as a hub for the community. We have a very hardcore group of loyal customers and fans within our Brompton community. So we also use those locations to host events, take rides from those stores, and whether it's our own stores or retailer stores, really go well beyond cycling, I would say. And we organise over probably 200 meetups across the US annually, which really fosters that kind of strong local and national cycling community. But I think one of the things that we've really been focusing on here is this notion of Brompton as a lifestyle choice. Whilst the bikes are made in the UK, in our factory in the UK, and particularly with the introduction of our larger wheel, 20-inch wheel, which is our G-Line and soon to be the G-Line Electric that comes out in October, they're bikes that are built for cities and made for America, particularly the larger wheel version, because it's built to be more versatile and handle not just kind of flat sidewalk pavement but different terrain as well. The uniqueness of Brompton is that it folds fast, so you can basically fold it under 20 seconds, 10 seconds. I'd challenge anyone to do it under 5 seconds, but it's been done. And they're really well engineered. So the uniqueness is the fold and the design of the fold. And whilst we've been iterating on that design over the past 50 years, that's still very much the kind of core sense of what the product does. The engineering is really designed to transform into a small, portable little package, which can kind of be taken anywhere, really. They're built to last, so they're very well made in terms of quality. We're proud of the quality, and they're just, I just think it's such a simple but genius product innovation, and I think that's probably why it's kind of developed this sort of cult following over the years. I've been at the company just over 4 years now. It was a slight sort of zigzag. I mean, I started my career in digital transformation, managing consultancy, went deep in media, very much on the business side, so working on strategy, business change and operations, and then directly with a media entity that focused its content and community around sustainable cities. So we did a lot around what makes a city sustainable and the connection with corporations, citizens, mayors and government in cities. And I really took an interest in that, and it was actually through that moment in my previous role that I was connected into Brompton, and actually our global CEO Will was on one of our events. So he was talking about the fact that he wanted to grow Brompton in North America, and so I put my hand up. They started a search process, and that was sort of my entry point in. But I actually did have bikes and cycling in my bones, I think. Like, my father was a huge cyclist and did time trials as a kid, and we'd cycled from London to Paris, my brother and my dad, and it's a product that you just get used to seeing in and around London all the time. So prior to living in New York, before I moved over here in 2016, I was in London. It's quite an iconic brand that you get used to very much seeing on the streets of London and beyond.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing all of that. So Brompton is still today manufactured in London. I understand it. It's the largest manufacturer still within the city.
And certainly for folding bikes. It was invented it was invented by Andrew Ritchie, who was our founder in 1975. Basically invented the first one in his apartment in London. He had stairs to go up, so it was really with that kind of thinking of, I want a tool to be able to move around every corner of the city, and it was kind of like a magic carpet that you could move around and be portable. And we have built the bikes in London ever since. Some of our accessories come from different countries, but the actual bikes themselves get built in the UK.
My first exposure to Brompton was actually years ago, probably a couple decades ago. I was living in Brooklyn, which I know we're going to talk about, because we're going to talk about great places to bike in America. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But I was living in Brooklyn, and a friend of mine, he's a sustainable design professor at Parsons in the city.
Oh, yeah.
And he was always on, Dave Bergman, he's always on his...
Yeah, I know Dave, yeah.
Oh, you know Dave? Oh,
yeah, well, we actually did a collaboration with Parsons. We worked with them and their design students on ways in which we could develop accessories for the bike or for the city or for people to better move around. So yeah, we did a partnership with them. It was really fun.
That is great. Yeah, he has been a fan and an advocate for quite some time. Like, I actually had a folding bike back then too. I lived in Greenpoint, and this goes back to 2005. And so I got this folding bike. I don't think that it still exists. It was a really stupid folding bike. It was like this reverse triangle. It was a really dumb design, very small wheels, but it looked incredibly cool. And it folded up in a way where it would just sort of collapse on itself, and you would roll it with it almost looked like one wheel. It was just so dumb. But whenever I would take it, it got so much attention. And I always felt like, this is just a weird thing to say, but I would take this thing on the subway whenever I was going into Manhattan from Brooklyn. And I would get dates. People would be like, whoa, look at this guy. And I knew they were thinking he's got a design sensibility. He clearly cares about the environment. It was this thing was saying so much about my values that I didn't have to actually tell anyone. I probably made it worse once I opened my mouth, but just looking at the thing, they were like, oh.
Why did you buy it? Did you buy it to look cool, or did you buy it because you felt like you were saving the world, or because it was really convenient for your life? I'm just intrigued.
I bought it because I love great design. Now, aesthetically, it looked cool. Functionally, actually was pretty lousy design, but I liked the design of it, and I actually did want something functional to get from Greenpoint down to the L train in Williamsburg, which is usually how I'd go into the city, that I could have the portability, to bring on the subway with me and then bring up to an office. Everything that Brompton, I'm into that. The value proposition in terms of urban mobility, and this was one of the other things that I was thinking about, oh, Dave, 2 decades ago, Bergman had his folding bike. I was reading an interview with someone from Brompton, I want to say. He's the head engineer, Carlisle.
Will Carly Smith.
Will Carlisle, okay, yeah. It comes across interesting, not afraid to offer his opinions. But he had this great quote. He was like, we were urban mobility at Brompton before there were urban mobility conferences. We've just been doing this for a really long time, thinking about the things that are now, in light of climate and sustainability and cities for a whole sorts of reasons, trying to get way smarter on multimodal transportation. All of it, right now, everyone's like, oh, urban mobility. And here's Brompton sitting there being like, hello, we've had this global iconic design and this really awesome thing for 50 years. So maybe my question is, how are you tapping into that moment? I would think these are powerful tailwinds for Brompton.
It is. It's interesting because I kind of think folding bikes, and particularly Brompton's like world's best kept secret. And there are quite a lot of people that I think see it and think, well, that's cool or quirky. And it takes a certain type of person, I think, to go, I can sit on this kind of interesting looking bike and feel good. But then when you're on it and you do actually start using it habitually, it has such a transformative effect on every aspect of life. Because I take it into Grand Central. I commute in a few times a week, and our office is down in Dumbo and our store's in Bleecker. So I take it on the train, and then I unfold and ride from Grand Central down 2nd Avenue and across the bridge. I love it, and I love that ritual. And not only the convenience of it, but the way it makes me feel, and physically. And I just think, why aren't more people doing this? But it takes years. I know this is sort of a cliche phrase, but it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. And I think I joined Brompton, you mentioned this, just off the back of COVID, where bike participation was at an all-time high, and people wanted to get out and they wanted to exercise when it was quite difficult to. And also, I think people found different clubs like community rides and community runs as a way to, I guess, combat loneliness and connect with people during quite a scary time. So the bike participation was peaking, the demand for bikes was incredibly high, and there wasn't enough supply, and demand really outweighed that. When I joined, we didn't have enough product in market, and then it was an interesting moment, and there was a kind of real bullwhip effect. I think that's what they call it in the operations and supply chain language, where the market got flooded with inventory. Over 90% of bikes get made overseas and are imported to the US. And then the demand snapped back. So we then had a couple of years of really being oversupplied, and a lot of the larger brands were forced to discount. And then it's just a race to the bottom. And at the same time, there was a lot of independent bike dealers that went out of business. And at the same time, consumers have started getting more used to buying things online. So there was a real shift in the industry, which I don't think has really normalized or recovered completely. And then layer on, obviously, this year with things like trade and tariffs, it's sort of been another knock-on effect to the bike industry. So I think it's a really interesting time, both globally and nationally. And I do think it's such a smart tool to combat not only climate, but some of the health challenges that we have in this country. There's some great opportunities, but I think there's still quite a lot of barriers to preventing people from seeing this as a normal way of life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And years ago, I worked for, this was in China, I worked for a company called Kryptonite Bike Locks. Like back in the day, it was like the best bike lock. And so they opened their first factory in China. I was there teaching English. They needed an American to show up in the factory. That was me. And it was great. We worked for them full time. It was a fantastic experience. But I remember talking with the guys at Kryptonite, and they were saying, I think at the time they were maybe a $25-30 million revenue per year company with a brand that everyone thought was like a $3 billion a year. Like the brand was so iconic, but the company itself had a lot runway to grow into it. Brompton, I read you guys are making something like 2,000 bikes a week out of your London factory, give or take.
Yeah,
about that.
Plus or minus, yeah.
So you have a brand that sells in the millions in an industry that now is doing something like 40 million bikes globally. Yeah, okay, so there's this kind of moment that is choppy, let's say. Still have to get through all this extra inventory, you've got tariffs, the moment's choppy. And yet, we know that we are seeing the rise of e-bikes in America, so that's also probably demanding more infrastructure, I would guess, because people actually want to be safe on their e-bike. And that's probably, I would think, an interesting kind of adjacent trend for folding bikes. I just think it's probably all helpful. But when I think about Brompton, and just doing some research, getting ready to talk to you, even what I can see over the last 6 months, right? You get GQ, it's the folding bike of the year. And then, of course, Bicycling Magazine, Cycling Magazine, it's the all-around best folding bike or whatever, right? You get all the accolades. Gear Patrol writes this awesome article on the new G line with the larger wheels. And so you're getting all that press. The New York Times comes along and says, designs that will probably stand the test of time. Brompton is now considered this classic, iconic design. We'll look back another 50 years from now, and that will be kind of on the small list of really, really great products. So when I look at that, I see a company that is leading, that what drives the brand, and this is awesome, is the actual product. It's almost like BMW in that way. It's like performance, design, the engineering, right? The quality, the experience of riding it. That's what they're covering. That's what they want to write about. And you're getting all of that coverage. Does that coverage move the sales needle? And I'll just come back to what I read about when you were hired. Brompton's dedicated to capturing the 98% of non-cyclists and giving them a tool to explore the city and move freely. Does that stuff capture the 98%, that other group that needs to be exposed?
Yes, I think it does. What is interesting, and you're absolutely right, so Brompton does this engineering company with this incredibly smart product, and we've spent years and years refining it, and it's expertly crafted and it's sustainably made. So we're also a B Corp, and we're ensuring that our manufacturing processes are environmentally conscious. One of the things that we really stand for is this notion of urban freedom and making people feel happier. And the number of times that you or I or others have been in traffic or underground, or, you know, not being able to move around as freely as you'd want to in a city, this is really designed to be a tool and a lifestyle that allows you to do that and gives you the freedom to do that. So that's what we've really been trying to hone in on. There has been a sort of sense traditionally that cycling is, like, if you think about who a cyclist is, a lot of people envisage these middle-aged men in lycra with, you know, there's a certain look, and we've really tried to deliberately steer away from that. A core part of our consumer group and our archetypes are cycling enthusiasts, but also we're really trying to tap into someone that knows how to ride a bike but wouldn't ordinarily have called themselves a cyclist. And you can be quite intimidated when you walk into some bike shops if you're not in lycra and talk a certain language. So the lean into that kind of press that you highlighted as well is really to try and tap into people that live in cities that want to express themselves, want that freedom to move around, appreciate well-made quality products, and see it as kind of a practical tool to make their life a bit easier and their life happier and healthier. That's really what we're trying to build. And certainly in North America, it's more of an awareness thing for us. So not only awareness of Brompton as a brand, but I think there's even a barrier to the use case of a folding bike, because there's so much space in America, and obviously cars are a thing, and 50% of biking in America is recreational. It's not all commuting. So there's also this thing of, well, why would I need a folding bike? Is that more beneficial to me than a full-size bike? And that's where you sort of start to look at city by city. There's more appropriate use cases for a folding bike in certain cities than others. It's definitely moved the needle in terms of growth. I think it's an interesting one off the back of COVID, when you've seen the industry have its ebbs and flows and ups and downs, but generally Brompton has bucked the trend in growing awareness and getting attention during this time. And I'd like to think we have done some unique things in trying to do that, and how we're connecting with people and acquiring new customers. And we can see from the data that a large proportion of our customers and sales over the past 4 years have been new and not repeat, but their existing customer base and our existing community are so powerful to us from a word of mouth point of view as well. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah, I think it does. Clearly, the product itself has high resonance. It's lauded. You win awards, lots of recognition in places where other brands would love to be turning up. I think GQ is really interesting because that's so crossover. It's so different than Bicycling Magazine in terms of who it's going to reach. Like, I love that. And then you have this core, passionate fan base, cyclists who are word of mouth. And then I do think it is interesting because I feel that intimidation myself, if I'm going to go into a bike shop, and I might feel like, I don't know. It's intimidating.
yeah.
And I'm a middle-aged white man. I don't wear a lot of lycra, but I feel like I'm supposed to know what to say, but I don't know what to say. And so when you talk about the fact that Brompton as a brand, you know, the team in the Americas have tried different things, is that about making the brand feel more accessible, enabling more people to see themselves kind of on Brompton?
It. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that playbook.
I mean, the number one choice factor for people here in choosing a Brompton or not choosing a Brompton after price is colour. And I think, you know, there's a lot of bike brands that the technical specifications would take lead over the colour of your bike. Look, some people don't like that, but it's the truth. And it's like, well, therefore we need to be leaning into that, and there's something there about style and how people want to look and what colour's on trend. And that's not poo-pooing the expert engineering and the technical aspects of the bike, but I think it's recognising those things and not feeling like that is, I don't know, diminishing your brand or product in any way. Because I think actually if you know that, you can kind of connect with your consumers on a level. But the playbook, I mean, it's multifold. I think our retailer strategy beyond our own direct-to-consumer channels is, we work with retailers across the country that are experts in the product, and they have been selling this thing way longer than I've been riding a Brompton. And then key retail partners like REI, they see the consumers coming in and they know the kind of key sales points of what Brompton brings. And I think it's really important to understand what someone's looking for, because it's quite hard to push a folding bike if they're looking for a downhill mountain bike or whatever it is. But I think that has been really key, is like, actually, who are our retailers, and making sure we've got retail experts in every area. We know also that test rides drive conversion. So we have to be physically in places and spaces so that people can try the product, and that drives an exceptionally high conversion for us. And a major investment this year is on our tech, so that we can better integrate our retailers with our e-commerce experience, so consumers can actually book a test ride in one of our retailers across the country and know they can go there and they can speak to an expert and try. All of the retailers have kind of demo product as well. Just integrating that experience will be really powerful. Our community piece, again, is something which is beyond just going on a ride. There is a sense of, and you sort of said it when you're on your bike, and I do this when I'm in New York, where if I see a Brompton, like you either sort of ding your bell and to give you a nod back. It's not exclusive, but it's sort of like, oh, you're in the know.
It's like a
Exactly. Yeah. And you've got this appreciation for something. So I think that community aspect has been incredibly powerful for us. The community meetups, people self-organize, they go on ride and share. And we've also seen that they like to customize their bikes as well. So if you go to China and other parts of Asia, everyone's kind of kitting out their Brompton in different ways. So a lot of the content that you see on social is from our community as well. So I think the distribution strategy, which is omni-channel, and the kind of content and the way that we're trying to connect with our community consumers and potential consumers, I think, is really key on how we bring to life who we are and what we are, and seeing it as a lifestyle instead of this kind of intimidating thing that I don't know whether I can whether I can ride or fold. And then I'd say the other aspect is we're really trying to activate city by city. And we can see that there's almost a playbook. It's called our city activation strategy. And we've got sort of 13 gold cities in the US that we're really leaning into to try and activate in a bigger way. So that's everything from what relationships do we have there, what retailers do we have there, let's engage and build our community there, and then what kind of live events and activations do we do. But that sort of focus on a city by city activation, and in some cases we've done some more significant brand activations, like Washington DC. We created this activation, it was called a Joy Crossing, and it was basically an artist that painted the streets, and it was really designed to slow down traffic and show people what life could be like in a city with beautiful art on the streets and slowing down traffic and minimizing accidents and things like that. So I'd say the sort of playbook is quite multifaceted, but it really leans into distribution, community, content, and live events.
Got it. I've seen that Brompton invested a lot into its technology, into its website, into its e-commerce experience. You're talking about integrating more with your retailers. How do you think about, I'm just curious, in 2025, building that type of brand where you do have your own e-commerce, your own stores, your owned Brompton channels, plus you have the 1,500 resellers you talked about, big other retailers like REI, the 1,500 bike shops. How do you navigate that in a way so all stakeholders are satisfied, and is that possible?
It's really hard. I think it is possible. Definitely don't always get it right. And I think brands have learned the hard way. Some brands traditionally were only working with retailers and wholesale partners, other brands were only doing online e-commerce sales and direct to consumer. I genuinely think to operate a profitable business with the various costs that it takes to bring product into this country and operate in this country, I think we have to have an omni-channel approach. We can't afford to open all of our own stores across the country, nor do I think we should. But also we couldn't do without our retail partners across the country, because we know that when people ride a Brompton in real life, they often fall in love with it. And so our key focus is how do we improve the tools to help customers find the ability to try out our product in locations near to them. And we need to ensure that we've got the right retailers that obviously know how to bring the brand to life and have the same passion that we do. And then we've obviously got to take responsibility for making sure we've got the right kind of systems and setup to be able to integrate the two and essentially come across as one platform. I think it's not great when it feels like these things are competing against one another. I do think there is a way to rise all tides, and I also think here where our awareness is quite low and we're still relatively new to the market, even in a downturn market, there's the opportunity to grow. The other thing is there is a big afterlife with once you've purchased a Brompton, you want to service it at least once a year. You want to go to a workshop where you trust the people that are there. So we've also seen a significant growth in workshop service revenue through our partners. And I think a lot of the retailers have seen a growth in that area if online sales have grown. But also I think the benefit to Brompton, because it folds up into this kind of neat little tiny package and it comes in a box that's not huge, actually it lends itself really well to being able to deliver direct to someone's home as well. So I think that's where we've seen, it's certainly where we've seen the biggest growth in the past 12 months, and even in the last quarter, which was particularly turbulent with everything going on with the current administration, we saw our e-com revenue up about 30% versus the same time last year. That is as much to do with the way consumers want to shop as well as us having the platform to do it. But brands have learnt the hard way as well, and I think there has to be a win-win. If you've not got that, I think it's incredibly difficult to help move your partners in the way that you need and want them to move, I guess.
Yeah, just hearing you describe it, I have a sense of the complications. Just plus with this type of product, when you see a Brompton online folded up, or you have one, or you just see it in the real world folded up, and then you learn like, oh yes, some of these models are so small you could pack it in the overhead bin on an airplane, and people are like, wait, what? And so then also knowing, just like you talked about, the experience of buying a bike online and having that come to your house with all of this packaging, and it's like such a pain in the butt, and then you got to take this bike out of it, like a regular bike, out of a huge box, and you got to get rid of all that like packaging, which is not fun, and then you got to get the bike to a shop to actually make sure it's okay and put the wheels. Like if you have a bike that comes in something that's like as tiny as a Brompton can show up, I would think there would be all these like unpacking videos. Which is like, yes, like the joy, you want to like create, urban happiness and joy. I would think the joy, right, of just being able to, it's kind of like a Casper mattress years ago, right? It was just
massively.
What? There's a mattress in this box. And like, what? There's a bike in this box.
Yeah, and it's like new bike day. Yeah, the unboxing experience for sure, with the exception of you stick the saddle on with an Allen key, they're ready to ride, you unfold it and go. I think our challenge is like making sure we get that across as a storytelling moment, and we're talking about those benefits as opposed to all of the technical specification of the bike. Like obviously that has to be there, but I think it's about articulating those benefits that people find really exciting, and the fact that you can throw it in the trunk of your car, you don't need a bike rack, like that's a hassle. Yeah,
exactly. No, so those differentiated moments I think are really powerful. And along those lines, I was looking at these pictures online. It was this year's Brompton World Championships in London. And I'm looking at these racing pictures of people on their Bromptons and someone catching this insane air with like tons of fans watching this World Championships. It just looked so fun.
Yeah.
And I think I read that you've done that that Brompton's done that as well in China, maybe? There was a China championship?
We have. I mean, we did it a lot pre-COVID, and it's kind of come back with a vengeance. And it's really the Brompton World Championships, it's called BWC. And it's brilliant, and it's fun, and people dress up, and in London, we took over that area in King's Cross near Granary Square, and people raced around. I wasn't actually there this year, I was there the year before. And we've done them in, Singapore, in Beijing. We want to do one in the US as well.
Yeah.
It's easier when you integrate it into a pre-existing event where you've already got like a cycling circuit. So we need to think about which city, if you've got any suggestions.
Yeah, it looked awesome, and it looks, a great celebration, and also just like made for social. That was the thing I thought too. It just seems so perfect for this day and age. So I'll be excited when that comes to the States. You're also on the board of People for Bikes, which is the, I think, trade association advocacy group for the overall bike industry. People for Bikes does a lot of research looking at which cities are the most bike friendly, and has been doing this for a while. This year, 2025, it sounds like, from their own rating system, which they've had for a long time, is a tipping point in terms of the number of cities that keep progressing and becoming more bike friendly.
Yes.
So do you have some insight into that, places that are popping?
People for Bikes do some extraordinary work. I mean, their whole vision is to make the USA the best place for cycling in the world. They do a lot of hard work on policy, as well as support brands in the industry in terms of trade as well. And they have this brilliant People for Bikes city data set. They recently released the 2025 city rankings. And of that, 234 US cities scored 50 or higher in the 2025 city rankings, which was up from just 33 cities in 2019. So it's really signalled an improvement in the bikeability in cities across the country, which I think is fantastic. And with the addition of the New York boroughs in that data, Brooklyn took over as the best large US city for biking with a score of 73, which is super cool, because I think people wouldn't ordinarily kind of connect Brooklyn with biking. And I think a lot of people that don't live in New York or don't cycle in New York think, oh my gosh, that's so scary. Also, I think last year's top large city, Minneapolis, came in second with a score of 72, followed by, I think it was Seattle. And then whilst most large cities saw similar marginal increases of 1 or 2 points, also Washington DC saw the largest improvement with a score increase from 46 to 52 in 2025. So I think like the shift means that all of the top 10 large US cities have scores above 50, which is, I think, showcasing even when we think actually things aren't progressing as quickly as they need to, there is clearly a nationwide commitment to improve bicycling in metropolitan areas. We know there's still a lot to do, but also since 2020, 80% of the US cities in there have improved their scores, with 22% improving by more than 10 points. So it's really encouraging to see that data. There's obviously still a lot more we can and should do, and I think often the benefits of biking are undervalued. And when you think about the crisis around obesity in this country, and 74% of adult Americans are now classed as overweight or obese, and I think close to 50% of children are overweight or obese, and pre-diabetes is up significantly, as well as depression and loneliness and mental health. I just think the benefits of moving, active mobility and biking are often understated when it comes to kind of a solution around some of those larger world problems. And we know that people who walk or bike to work are significantly happier, they're less anxious, they're less depressed, and they experience up to a 26% drop in depression symptoms while lowering their risk of like heart disease and early death by about 40%. So there's a lot of stats in there of how beneficial biking is, even if you're kind of not doing it for those reasons.
Yeah, there's a lot of upside in that.
Yeah.
So I was excited to see those new rankings. That's something that we've tracked here on Supercool. I was excited, having lived in Brooklyn, excited to see Brooklyn now starting to emerge as a recognized leader. I think that's pretty fantastic. You also had flagged something recently I saw on LinkedIn. That was a study that had looked at Seattle and commuting, and people who commute by bike versus walking, public transit versus car. And it was this spread. I think it was, Ride
Panda.
The CEO of this Ride Panda posted. They surveyed like 75,000 people in Seattle and found this huge, just when you see the data, you can know it sort of intuitively, but when you see the spread between satisfaction of your commute and happiness when you're on a bike versus in a car, it's so stark, especially in the city where where it's becoming so much easier.
It really is. Just things like it boosts productivity. There was another stat where walking and biking to work improves alertness and energy and productivity up to 15% higher in the first few hours of the workday, which I genuinely feel when I'm biking in the morning. But I think that was the Harvard Business Review study. And there was another one, which was workers who commute actively take 27% fewer sick days per year than car commuters. So I think there's this interesting thing, particularly with this current administration, of how do you articulate the benefits of something like this, not just as a green eco moment, but actually there is genuine economic benefits for the country rather than seeing it as this kind of political thing, you know?
I do, and I completely agree. In summary, I think that's absolutely it in terms of health, economics. I mean, the joy, cycling wins out, right?
And the innocence, like the innocence of when you're a kid and you're on a bike. I sort of just think it would be sad to lose that. The fun and freedom you feel.
I agree with that as well. It's actually one of the things we love about where we live in South Carolina. I mean, we live in this wooded little community right by the ocean, and my kids have that freedom. Juliet, I want to thank you for taking time to come speak with us. It's been really fantastic to hear about what you're building here in the States with Brompton and continuing to grow the brand globally. Excited for what's happening here, though, and wish you continued success.
Thank you, Josh. So nice to meet you, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for listening to my conversation with Juliet. If you enjoyed it and appreciate the perspective Supercool brings to the conversation around business and climate, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review. It's the best way you can help us reach new audiences who would benefit from these conversations too. See you next time.